there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of 12 Kings and Sharakhai by Bradley Beaulieu. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways. Sharakhai, the great city of the desert, center of commerce and culture, has been ruled by 12 kings. Cruel, ruthless, powerful, and immortal kings. With their army of silver spears, their elite company of blade maidens, and their holy defenders, the terrifying Asirim, the kings uphold their positions as undisputed, invincible lords of the desert. There is no hope of freedom for any under their rule, or so it seems, until Seda, a brave young woman from the West End slums, defies the king's laws by going outside on the holy night of Bet Zahir. What she learns that night sets her on a path that winds through both the terrible truths of the king's mysterious history and the hidden riddles of her own heritage. Together, these secrets could finally break the iron grip of the king's power, if the nigh omnipotent kings don't find her first. 12 Kings and Sharakhai is an adult desert fantasy. It is a multiple perspective and what I classify as a revenge story. In this book, our main character's name is Seda, and she is an orphan. When she was about 10 years old, her mother was killed by these 12 kings that rule Sharakhai. And these 12 kings are pretty much immortal, and they are very cruel and ruthless. And anytime there is anyone that tries to oppose them, the way they retaliate is extremely violent. Seda's mother definitely had secrets, and upon her death, she left Seda with a book with different poems in it. And as Seda gets older, she begins to decipher these poems and learns that they are kind of like explaining the weakness of each king and how she can actually kill each king. After Seda's mom dies, she ends up getting taken in by a man named Dardaza, who runs an apothecary. And she eventually leaves there when she is about 14 years old and ends up becoming a pit fighter. So she gets trained by this other lady pit fighter, and that's how she makes her money and her living, is that she fights in these tournaments, not to the death, but just fights these other opponents in this big kind of Coliseum stadium type thing. There is really nothing special about Seda. She definitely had a rough life, a rough upbringing. She is called a gutter wren because she's not very wealthy and she comes from like the poorer parts of town, so she's looked down upon. So there's really nothing about Seda to make her stand out from other people who are poor, and even her identity as a pit fighter, no one knows that it is Seda. She goes by the White Wolf, so she has an alias for her fighting persona. There are a couple of side plots that are going on in this book as well. So we also have this entity called the Moonless Host who are trying to overthrow these 12 kings. And we follow a couple different characters that are working within the Moonless Host. The Moonless Host, like I said, only wants to seek revenge upon the 12 kings, and they kind of don't care who they hurt in the process in order to reach their goal. As for the characters, there are 4 main points of view that we follow in this book. We follow Seda, our main protagonist. Then we follow Emre. Emre is Seda's best friend. They grew up together, they live together, and at times in the book it is mentioned how Seda wants to be more than friends with Emre, but he doesn't really respond to her feelings. Then we also have the point of view of Isan, who is one of the kings. He's called the Honey Tongue King, and we didn't get that many chapters from his point of view, but for some reason I'm intrigued by him. I'm really interested to see why the author decided to focus on this one king. And then we have a character, I think his name is Quaimar or Quaimir, and he is from this kingdom outside of Sharakhai, and he is trying to find the leader of the Moonless Host because he wants to murder him. So he is on a revenge quest for Masid, who is the leader of the Moonless Host. So lots of revenge plots going on in this book, like I said. As for the 2 main characters that we got to know the most, definitely the first one is Seda. And I thought Seda was a fine character for the type of role that she fit in. I really didn't feel love or hate towards her, but I felt that she was written in a way that helped her achieve the goals and overcome the obstacles that the author put in her path. Seda has had a hard life, but she is very smart. She is very resourceful. She is very persistent, stubborn, determined. So, like I said, she has all those qualities to persevere when faced with opposition, which I think is how the author needed to write her. And then we have Emre, her best friend slash kind of love interest, I guess. And I don't know, something about him like made me not trust Emre. And I don't know what it was because Seda calls him her brother, even though they're not, blood, because that is her only family. That's the only person that she loves. And like, I just couldn't get on board with him. I feel like he's going to betray her at some point in this book, and I really don't know where that feeling comes from. I mean, he was a good character. He was good looking and charming and funny, and he ends up getting involved in the Moonless Host or with the Moonless Host, and he's trying to oppose the 12 Kings just like Seda is. So they have similar goals. I just feel like there's going to be some sort of conflict between them somewhere in this series. As for the likes of this book, I felt like the author did an awesome job creating a very immersive, rich world. I loved the desert setting. There's a lot of depth to this world as well. So this book has a lot of backstory to it, like history of Sharakhai and the kings that we get introduced to, as well as the gods and the mythology or religion even of this world. And I'm usually not a reader that really cares too much about like the intervention of the gods and the mythology and that kind of thing in books. But in this case, the gods do intervene in the lives of the people and they do have a role to play. So it's relevant. I also really liked the mystery of this book, and I liked uncovering the mystery as Seda did. I felt like that was really interesting. So we don't really know exactly who Seda's mother was. We just know a little bit about her, but there's definitely a lot or something significant with regards to her and how she knew Nalame, one of the gods, and how she knew how to kill these kings, how she wrote the book of poems. Why didn't she tell Seda, what everything was about when she was alive? Why did she go to the king's palace and end up getting murdered? So there's just a lot of mystery surrounding Seda's mother and Seda herself. So I feel like that was one of the things that kept me gripped the most, was just learning and uncovering these tidbits of information as our main character did. As for the magic in this world, at least in book one, there wasn't a ton of magic. So it's not like there's a magic system per se, but still I felt like the way that the author wrote it was really interesting. So there are obviously gods and the gods intervene. And there are these trees out in the desert that if you eat their petals, they kind of enhance your natural abilities. So at certain times during the book, Seda eats these petals and is able to fight better and have better like reflexes and things like that. But as for like internal inherent magic or wielding magic, there wasn't anything like that, but there might be as the series goes on. So I would say that the magic in this world is definitely very light compared to like a Sanderson book or a Brent Weeks book or something like that. As for the things that I disliked, there really wasn't too much. So I did find this book to be slightly tropey and very predictable. It's tropey because it's your traditional revenge story, and then you find out something about our main character Seda that's like, I knew from the beginning was gonna, happen. But despite the fact that it is a bit tropey and predictable, I still really enjoyed it. The author was able to spin a story using very common elements that still kept me gripped. This book also was very long. There were a lot of flashbacks. So we see flashbacks starting when Seda was like 8, 9 years old, and then kind of leading up into her early teens. So you would read 2 chapters and then there would be a flashback. But while that did kind of bog down the story, I will tell you, it explains everything about Seda. It explains everything about her life, even the small things. Everything is explained. So the author will introduce something in present day and then go back and explain how that thing happened or why this character did this because of what happened 5 years ago. So if you're someone that really doesn't enjoy flashbacks, they're hit or miss for me depending on, the reason that the author's doing them, then that might annoy you. I found it to bog down the story a little bit, but like I just said, it did provide those details that you might be curious about with regards to our characters and story. In the end, I was pleasantly surprised by this book. I really enjoyed it. It gripped me from the beginning. There was never a point where I didn't want to read the book. I wanted to know what happened, be in this world, find out the mystery, and I ended up giving 12 Kings and Sharakhai 4 out of 5 stars. Alright, you guys, let me know in the comments if you have read 12 Kings and Sharakhai or if you have any desert fantasy recommendations, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye!